Pandemic. By A.S. Geek 2012. Chapter 6. Progress. Starlight set down her coffee as slow hoof steps approached the dining room. She raised an eyebrow as Twilight entered the room, the alicorn's fur and feathers in disarray. "No offense, Twilight, but you look awful." "I had a nightmare and had trouble falling back to sleep after that," said Twilight as she took a seat at the table. "Didn't Princess Luna help you with it?" "She did. That's why I had trouble afterward. She gave me too many things to think about." Spike emerged from the kitchen, an apron around his waist. "Your usual tea, Twilight?" Twilight shook her head. "No, I'll have some coffee, please." "Black." "Wow, you really must have had a rough night," said Spike. "One black coffee coming up." "What happened?" Starlight asked as Spike headed back into the kitchen. Twilight explained her dream. Starlight did her best not to giggle when she learned it was over that A-. "But it made me realize that we could indeed have seen different writing in that document in the archives because it happened before," Twilight concluded. "That's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?" said Starlight. "I know you're upset over that grade, but don't you think this?" Twilight banged a forehoof on the table. "I know what I read. I know I got every reference right. The only way this could have happened is if the text changed between when I read it and my teacher read it. It wasn't even a huge change. It was a very minor fact that wasn't even a deciding factor on the historical event that was the subject of the paper." "Well, okay, but you said Princess Luna told you something that upset you." Twilight told her about the private journal. Starlight smiled. "There you go, problem solved. Once we have that, we—" "Didn't you hear a word I said?" Twilight cried. "I can't pry into Celestia's private life without a good reason. And protecting Canterlot from something potentially dangerous isn't enough. It's not harming anything or any pony at the moment, and I have Rainbow Dash on her way to the Griffin Kingdom." Spike emerged from the kitchen with a tray. Twilight smiled and plucked the steaming mug of coffee from it with her magic. "Thank you, Spike." Starlight rested her head on a forehoof and smirked. "Come on, Twilight, admit it. You're burning with curiosity about Celestia's private life." "I am not, and neither should you." Starlight spread her forehooves. "All I want to know is if the rumors about Princess Celestia being a cakeaholic are true." Twilight face hoofed. "You're impossible. Hey, I wish I could pack away the treats like she does and not have it go right to my flanks. I guess immortality has its fringe benefits." The castle suddenly shook from the force of a dragonling belch in the kitchen, which lit the room bright green for a moment. Spike coughed a few times before emerging holding a thick book with a golden cover, the image of Celestia's cutie mark embossed upon it. "This arrived for you, Twilight," Spike said in a raspy voice, still coughing up green-tinged smoke. "Oh, shiny!" Starlight said, snatching it from Spike in her magic. "Wait, Starlight, stop!" said Twilight. Starlight rolled her eyes as she levitated the book over the table. "Will you relax? See, I'm not opening the book. I'm. She trailed off and frowned. Twilight took it in her own magic and tugged it from Starlight's grip. "This needs to be handled with the utmost respect and care." "Well, yes, but—" "No buts." Twilight very gently set the book down in the center of the table. "For now, this remains our last resort. I want to hear what Rainbow Dash was able to find out." Starlight stared at the book and lit her horn. "You may want to reconsider that." "What are you doing?" Twilight demanded. "Do I need to shield this book from you? Stop acting like a little filly Ann. There's mind magic in this book." Twilight's mouth fell open. What? Spike hopped into a chair. "Are you serious, Starlight?" "I'm dead serious," said Starlight. "It's faint, but it's definitely there, likely imbued into the pages. But how can you even detect that? Twilight said. The glow around Starlight's horn faded. While it may be a dubious distinction, I don't think there's another unicorn in Equestria with the same knowledge of mind control magic as me. You know that stew of spells I used on the others recently? I'm detecting a similar resonance, just far more subtle. Spike turned to Twilight. Could that be what Princess Luna was worried about? She said her sister was acting weird. What if her own journals are doing it? Oh, heavens, Twilight cried. That could be why she's acting like this. If she's fallen under the sway of some evil spell that... Whoa, wait, said Starlight, waving a hoof. I didn't necessarily mean it that way. But what else could it possibly be? Starlight smiled. Well, now, the only way to find out is to actually read the book. Her horn glowed, and the front cover started to open. Twilight frowned, and a quick burst of her own magic slammed it shut. Starlight sighed. Twilight, really? Unless you can prove to me that this thing is an immediate danger to us. No, it's not, Starlight said reluctantly. It's not radiating mind magic. Whatever the effect is, it's more subtle than that. Then we can wait. Starlight leaned her head on a hoof again. Fine, whatever. Asterisk. A smirk spread across Rainbow Dash's muzzle as she rocketed upward, her wings a blur as she shot high into the skies above the Griffin Kingdom. She risked a glance behind her, and her eyes widened when she saw the sly smile of Gilda as the Griffin seemed to be catching up almost too easily. Rainbow suddenly executed a snap turn, the force of which scorched the air in her wake. Think fast! She bellowed as she barreled straight for her friend. Gah! Gilda cried before doing a quick barrel roll to get out of the way. Rainbow giggled as she left a corkscrew rainbow trail in her wake. Oh, you little stinker! Gilda cried before diving after her friend. Rainbow grinned. She started a tight curve around the spire of a recently restored castle and glanced behind her. Hey? Where'd she? Surprise! Whoa! Gilda had zipped around the same spire the other way. Rainbow did a sharp 90-degree turn and felt the tip of her tail brush Gilda's flank. Gilda flew on for a few seconds before stopping and hovering. She turned towards Rainbow and laughed. You always did fall for that trick. Rainbow hovered and chuckled. Yeah, I guess you got me there. Wanna call it a draw this time? Fine by me. You're a much better sport about this sort of thing than you used to be. Rainbow flew at a more sedate pace towards her friend. Yeah, well, let's just say being in the Wonderbolts has taught me a few things. Gilda lightly punched Rainbow in the shoulder. Yeah, congrats and all that. Rainbow smiled and rubbed her shoulder. Even a light tap by a full-grown griffin was enough to leave a bruise. She looked towards the ground. The place seemed completely transformed. Where run-down streets and ramshackle houses had been before now stood wide avenues and neat, spacious homes built specifically for a proud species of avians. I'm not the only one who deserves congrats. Wow, you guys have done a lot with the place since Pinky and I were here last. Gilda puffed out her chest a bit and smiled. Thanks. It's a lot of hard work, but that's what griffins used to be about. We're sorta rediscovering our past, you know. Speaking of which, that's kinda why I'm here. Ah, and here I thought it was just to visit an old friend. Guess when you become famous, you forget the little people. Rainbow snorted and bopped her forehoof against Gilda's shoulder. Oh, stop it, you big goof. But, yeah, I should visit more often. Gilda chuckled and waved a claw. It's okay. Let's head back down to the ground and we can talk. Race yay! Rainbow cried before speeding off. Saw that coming, Gilda said with a smirk as she took off. After landing at the same time and engaging in a brief debate over who won, Gilda said, so lay it on me. What's up? Rainbow considered pulling out the scroll that Twilight had given her, but she didn't want to put her friend to sleep. Twilight wanted to know if you knew anything about some sorta incident that happened between griffins and ponies 20 years ago. Gilda snorted. Who, me? I was only a chick at the time. Yeah, but what about your parents? You ever hear stories from them? Like what kind? About maybe some sort of war brewing. Gilda's face slowly turned thoughtful. Well, not sure how useful this'll be, but my father started to rant about ponies getting too big for their britches or some nonsense like that. Rainbow gave her a surprised look. Really? Why? I think Equestria had an embassy here back then. At least they had some sorta envoy, not that you can find a single griffin who remembers their name. But war? She laughed. You gotta be kidding me. We were starting on the skids back then. How could we have made war on Equestria? Celestia would have rolled over us by herself. But that's really weird, said Rainbow. Twilight was sure Princess Celestia was worried about war breaking out. The egghead is almost never wrong about stuff like that. Gilda shrugged. Dunno what to tell you. Maybe there could have been some griffin hotheads at the time. We do have a warrior culture, and despite the big downturn we took, there were always those among us who wouldn't let us forget that. You don't have any sort of records or? Gilda laughed harder. You really are a card today, aren't you? You saw the place when you and Pinky showed up. You think we'd care about something like maintaining records? Yeah, good point, said Rainbow. I just didn't want to go back empty-hoofed to Twilight. She's counting on me to figure this out. Yeah, about that, said Gilda. What's the deal? Something must be up. It is, but I'm not sure how much I can tell you. Gilda smirked. Now you really got me interested. Okay, fair enough. But if you do have something, let me know. I want to help if I can. Least I can do to repay you guys for your help. You got it, Gilda. Asterisk. Rainbow was eager enough to tell Twilight what she had learned, that she took a more direct route home aided by a well-placed sonic rain boom. Thus she got into Ponyville by late afternoon. Twilight paced slowly as she listened. So that's all you were able to find out? Yeah, I wish I had more for you, said Rainbow. And you're sure of the accuracy of this information? Well, as accurate as Gilda's memory is, and she's pretty sharp. Twilight stopped and sighed. Well, thank you, it was worth a shot. We did learn one thing, said Starlight as she stepped forward. We learned that this whole Griffin War may be a red herring. I don't think so, said Twilight. Maybe it didn't happen as Cadance remembers it, but something did happen, and I feel it's still connected to all this. In either case, you got what you wanted, said Starlight. Now can we read the book? Rainbow tilted her head. What book? Twilight waved a hoof. It doesn't matter, it. Starlight grinned. Princess Celestia's Secret Diary. Rainbow gasped. No way. Twilight whirled around. Starlight. That is so cool, said Rainbow. Twilight face hoofed. No, it isn't. Hey, can you let me know if you find out if she's as much of a cakeaholic as ponies say she is? She's not a cakeaholic. Twilight yelled. She eats no more or less cake than the next pony. I should know, I was her student. Satisfied? Okay, said Rainbow. Geez, Chui, calm down. Starlight smirked. Yeah, have a piece of cake, Twilight. Rainbow giggled. Twilight frowned and marched up to Starlight. Now listen to me. We are going to read that book, but we are going to do this in an orderly and most of all, respectful manner. No jokes, no fooling around. Do I make myself clear? As crystal, said Starlight. All right. I moved the book to the library. Let's go. They headed off, and Rainbow grinned and hovered behind them, only to have the library doors slammed in her face. "Hey!" she called out to no avail. Inside, Twilight turned her head towards the door long enough to cast a silence shield on it. "I've swept the room with a powerful detection spell earlier." Starlight stepped up to the table, her eyes on the book. "To detect what?" "Any sort of magic that might serve as surveillance." "Ah, right, yeah," said Starlight with a roll of her eyes. "While you're at it, check for invisible changeling ninjas and parasprite commandos." Twilight frowned. "What did I say about no jokes? Don't you think you're being just a weensy bit paranoid?" "I don't want to take any chances," said Twilight. "There could be very sensitive material in this journal, especially if it does contain the truth about what really happened during that period of time." "Now, you said there was mind magic in it." "Yes. I can still detect it." "Do we need to shield ourselves somehow?" said Twilight. "Is there some sort of enchantment on it that will attempt to control our minds?" "It's not like that," said Starlight. "While the basis of the magic is similar to my spells, it's not designed for direct control." Twilight stepped alongside Starlight and took a deep breath as she reached out with her magic and took hold of the front cover. "All right. Here goes." Asterisk. Twilight soon realized that some of her fears about the book were justified. Celestia had not told a dry tale of her day-to-day actions. She spoke from the heart in much of what she wrote, injecting the prose with her fears, her insecurities, and her doubts. At odd moments, worry over what would happen when Luna returned consumed her. Twilight finally had to turn away from the book, uttering a shaky sigh as her eyes threatened to well up. She knew logically that Celestia was not some infallible goddess, but it soon became clear that her heart believed otherwise, and it took only the first few entries to utterly shatter the illusion. Starlight stepped up to her and draped a foreleg around Twilight's barrel. "I'm sorry." Twilight shook her head. "I know it's stupid. Celestia never claimed to have all the answers. There isn't even anything terrible happening. Just day-to-day worries about her ponies." "Yeah, but she has a lot of them to worry about," said Starlight softly. "And I have to admit, it's the mundaneness that has me a little suspicious." "What do you mean?" Starlight turned back towards the book. "Well, like you said, there's nothing really special happening. I know we're only a little ways in, but I would have expected this period to be a little more, I don't know, dramatic." "What about the mind magic?" said Twilight. "Is that in play here?" Starlight's horn glowed. "It's here. It's woven into the pages in a rather complicated fashion. I've never seen anything quite like it." "Could it be masking something in the text?" Twilight said. "Like the way that name changed the other day, or the reference in my report?" Starlight frowned. "But why would it result in seeing something different? I'm not getting the connection yet. We need to read on and perhaps find a pattern." Twilight sighed. "I was afraid you would say that." "All right, let's continue." Asterisk. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Twilight looked up from her reading. She glanced at the window and saw it was nighttime. "How long have we been at this?" Starlight nursed a headache with her hoof. "Too long." "Twilight," came Spike's voice. Twilight nudged open the door enough for him to enter. "Sorry, Spike, we lost track of time. I was wondering if you wanted any dinner." "Yes, please. Could you bring it to us?" Starlight sighed. "Can't we go to the dining hall? I really could use a break." "I know, but I think I found something." She turned back to Spike. "Dinner for two, please." "Coming right up," said Spike before he dashed away. "So what did you find?" Starlight asked. Twilight nudged the door shut. Something is not adding up about her style of prose. "Come again." "Every pony who's a writer develops a distinct style," said Twilight. "Everything from word choice, to sentence structure, to length of time spent on a given subject, and it's that last one that is wildly fluctuating. Starlight stepped up to the book. Show me. Twilight flipped through the book. Here. She spent 2 pages on a crisis that made her concerned Discord was about to slip free of his prison. But right before this she flipped the pages. She spent 6 pages on a very mundane, and frankly very boring and repetitive discussion of court politics. Starlight examined the pages. Her horn glowed. She flipped the pages back and forth between the 2 entries. In this longer section, the mind magic is stronger. Twilight's pupils shrank slightly. Really? What does it mean? Starlight looked thoughtful. I'm not sure yet, other than I'm becoming increasingly convinced we can't trust what we're reading. Twilight gasped. Are you saying the text has been altered? Not quite. Starlight sighed. I know, this is frustrating for you, but I'm not sure how to describe what I'm seeing. If there is a spell here, can't you break it? Starlight turned to her teacher. How much experience do you have with mind control spells, Twilight? Twilight blushed slightly. Other than the, incident with the wanted-needed spell? Not much. I got soured on the subject after that. Sombra's dark magic was more corruption than control. Mind control spells of this complexity can't be broken unless I can see the entire structure, said Starlight. If I just lash out at the spell, I could accidentally incinerate the book. So what do we do? Starlight smiled. We have to be smarter than the spell. We have to trick it into revealing itself, and I have an idea how. Starlight turned away. Twilight, go read the next 4 entries. Memorize their length and where they start and end. Let me know when you're done. While Twilight read, Spike arrived with dinner. Starlight took the tray and set it on a nearby table. She started to munch on some celery as she waited. Twilight finally lifted her head and turned around. There, done. Starlight stepped up to the book. What page did you end it? End it, said Twilight. 147. Starlight finished her celery and flipped the book to that page. Go eat something while I read those same entries. Twilight nodded and headed away. Starlight started reading the entries in reverse, all the while her magical senses tracing the intricate weave of the mind magic. To say she was impressed with this level of mastery was an understatement. Back in her evil days, she would have killed for this level of skill. She lifted her head. All right, done. Here's what I just read. Twilight started munching on some broccoli. Starlight paused to switch the order back to first to last in her head. 3 pages on a trade treaty with the Minotaurs. 2 pages on receiving a Zebrakin representative. Twilight blinked and stopped munching. 5 pages on reviewing new curricula at the School for Advanced Unicorn Magic. 4 pages on reviewing new economics legislation. That's not right. Twilight said. Starlight started to smile. Oh. You got 2 reversed. It was 5 pages on the Zebrakin and 2 pages on the curricula. Starlight flipped to the overlapping region. Words crawled about on the pages like confused ants, and the threads of the spell stood out in sharp relief. Her lips curled into a sly smile as her horn blazed. Gotcha. Twilight nearly choked on her food. Wait. What are you? Starlight let loose with her spell, and the pages of the book glowed blinding white. In a panic, Twilight galloped over to her, but by then the spell was done, and the glow had subsided. Twilight's mouth fell open, and her pupils shrank to near pinpricks as her horrified eyes fell on utterly blank pages. What did you do to the book? Revealed the lie, Starlight said. She flipped the book first forward and then back. Now there were 2 pages apiece on the Zebrakin and the curricula, and in between were 3 blank pages. Twilight yanked the book into her grip and quickly reread the Zebrakin section. This is not what I read. Twilight cried. I mean, yes, the gist of it is there, but the version I read had much more detail, but, most it was. She trailed off. Rather pointless and unnecessary, said Starlight. Minor facts that were not really important to the subject at Hoof. Just like the reference that got you that A-. Twilight set the book down. Explain to me what just happened, please. Simple, said Starlight. You know how the mind can sort of fill in the blanks? Like the old trick of removing all the vowels of a sentence but you can still read it. Yes, I'm familiar with that. This is the same principle. Some pony excised information from this journal, then used a mind magic spell to fool our brains into filling in the blanks. It takes the form of causing your head to extend the previous entry. Since it relies on your own mind, every pony reads something slightly different, but because the additional information is so trivial, no pony really notices or cares about the discrepancy. She grinned. Except young egghead unicorns like you. I have to admit, I'm really impressed with this. Twilight flipped through the book. More blank pages appeared. I don't believe this, she murmured. I had to confuse the spell, said Starlight with a hint of pride in her voice. I read the pages backwards, so the spell backfilled instead of forward-filled. When you corrected me, it briefly short-circuited the spell. It was struggling to compensate when I zapped it. Twilight's eyes widened. And if this spell was on the residency manifest in the archives? Then I suspect Mr. Night Moonshine is the next to last resident of that building, said Starlight. And that explains why I didn't detect it. Twilight said. I was looking for alteration magic, not mind magic. But I didn't excise all the magic in this book, said Starlight. When I stripped away the mind magic, I found something else underneath it. It's not something I've ever seen before. Twilight looked down, and her horn glowed. I have, she said in a low voice. It's dark magic. Starlight recoiled. What? How would you know? Because I know how to do some dark magic. Starlight gaped. You do? Twilight turned towards her. Celestia taught me some. I needed it to deal with Sombra and the Crystal Empire. Whoa, wait, said Starlight in a quavering voice. You're telling me that Princess Celestia knows dark magic? Twilight sighed. I know where you're going with this. It only proves what I've been saying all along. She's behind this big cover-up. Who knows how many documents this has been done to? But if there is this big cover-up, why even bother to restrict access to the archives to every pony? Starlight shook her head. No, Twilight, Princess Celestia was not trying to restrict access to every pony, because every pony can't detect or undo the magic. You can. She was trying to keep you away from it because she knew you could find a way around it. But I saw this dark magic only after you stripped away the mind magic. Starlight fell into a decent imitation of Celestia's voice. Oh, Starlight. Go back to your friendship lessons, Starlight. Don't worry your little unicorn head about this pesky magic stuff. Twilight frowned. You've made your point. My question is, why even use dark magic if all you want to do is erase some text? Said Starlight. Doesn't that seem like overkill to you? Twilight considered. I have an idea, but... She took a deep breath. Whatever was removed, whatever was covered up, other ponies would have remembered it regardless of whether any pony had written it down. Unless, you extended the effect to them as well. Starlight's eyes widened. You don't mean that not only were written records erased, but ponies' minds as well? Yes. But you could accomplish the same thing without dark magic, Starlight declared. You just need a more powerful mind magic spell. That's the thing about dark magic, Starlight, said Twilight in a subdued voice. It's terrible, yes, but it's also expedient. Whoever did this, and yes, I'm still holding out hope it wasn't Celestia. They specifically harnessed dark magic to corrupt the information rather than excise it. It would be easier, and most of all, it would allow it to be retrieved later. Starlight frowned. Likely after every pony who could have remembered is conveniently dead from old age. Like I said, immortality has its perks. Twilight turned away. Let's have some dinner. I'm really famished now. So am I, said Starlight as she followed. But then what? Then I'm going to make an attempt to strip the dark magic from the book in hopes that it will reveal the missing information. Asterisk. Starlight glanced towards the moon glowing in one of the windows. Twilight, it's late, maybe you should hold off until tomorrow. I don't expect complete success, said Twilight as she stepped up to the book. It could take days to properly reverse the spell, but if I can loosen it enough, I can get a clue as to what's been hidden from us. I have to admit, this is a bit chilling, said Starlight as she followed. Not just that dark magic has been used to erase history, but that you're going to use the very same thing against it. I don't like it either, said Twilight in a solemn voice. Dark magic calls to you. It tempts you. It wants to consume you. That's how Sombra became both so powerful and so utterly evil. Starlight shivered. She didn't want to think about what would have happened had she gained access to it before she had reformed. Twilight looked down at the book and lifted a hoof towards Starlight. A little room, please, and be quiet. I need to concentrate. Starlight stepped back. Twilight took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Starlight swallowed as her fur seemed to stand on end, as if the room had become electrified. She shivered as an icy wind blew around her and ruffled Twilight's mane. The wind rose to a howl, and Twilight's eyes snapped open. Starlight stumbled back a step. Twilight's eyes glowed bright green. A black ichor bubbled from Twilight's horn, and a beam of inky darkness blasted from it and onto the book, enveloping it in the same slimy substance that coated Twilight's horn. Starlight's heart hammered. She didn't know whether to be impressed or terrified. Then the lights started to dim. She chose terrified. Asterisk. Hello, Twilight, it's so good to see you again. Despite steeling herself for it, the dulcet tones still sent a shiver through her. The words came from everywhere and nowhere, trying to worm their way into her subconscious. This time the voice had been that of her sweet mother, and just as warm and inviting as the real thing. Twilight floated in a void, and she fought the urge to extend her wings. No flight here, only existence and power. Yes, you want that power, don't you, Twilight? Please, take it. Twilight extended her magical touch into the pool of dark magic, manifesting as a vast lake of ichor. She shivered as it made contact with her psyche, yet it was anything but cold. It filled her with a comfortable warmth, wrapped around her like a soft blanket. That's it, Twilight. Never feel cold again. Never feel powerless again. Twilight took a deep breath. Yes, she knew she would never feel cold again. That was the problem. She would never again understand or care how her actions could be seen as cold to others. The concept would become completely foreign to her. Twilight thus took only what she needed. Ah, come on, Twily. Came her brother's voice. You can take more than that. You can handle it. Twilight turned her back on the voice, at least in a metaphysical sense. Up, down, left, right had no meaning here. She willed a hole to open in the dark magic realm, and it obeyed. The book appeared before her, its dark magic spell like a writhing serpent coiled amongst the pages of the book. Twilight concentrated, then sent her magic into the book. The serpent shuddered and fought, and Twilight trembled with the effort. She had not taken anywhere near the amount of magic she needed to accomplish this task. Twilight, you don't give yourself enough credit, came the concerned voice of Cadance. You can do this. You can take all the power you want. For that's what you want, isn't it, my former student? Said Celestia's voice. To fix everything in one fell magical swoop. Twilight paused to steady herself. She did need more power, but it would be on her terms. She opened herself as a conduit rather than a capacitor, sending the power out of her as fast as it came in. To her relief, the voices fell to mutterings, allowing her to better focus on the task at hoof. She sent more power into the book, against the serpent, and still it fought. She opened her magical senses and gasped when she saw the entirety of this metaphorical creature. She saw its coils extending into books, scrolls, notes, minds. Twilight gasped. The true scope of this was monstrous. And yet you could do it, Twilight, said the voice of Luna. You could break it here and now. That would mean taking in a vast amount of dark magic and mixing it with her own, which she refused to do. But there was something that she could do. The dark magic spell was powerful, but not perfect. It was so vast that it had weaknesses that could be exploited. Even this simple rattling of the serpent's cage was enough for her to see glimpses of the missing history, yet all she was getting were distantly related pieces she could not put together into a cohesive whole. She readied an indexing spell. She admitted to feeling a certain sense of irony that a spell she had perfected to better organize her library would be used in such a context. Dark magic frothed and boiled as she waited for the right moment. When she spotted an opening, she let loose the spell. The effect was almost instantaneous, and a name struck her with such force that she went tumbling head over hooves through the void. Asterisk. Twilight. Starlight cried when the alicorn slumped to the floor. The darkness, the cold, and the ichor had evaporated the instant Twilight broke contact with the book. Starlight galloped around the side of the table, but Twilight was already stirring. I am all right, she said in a weak voice. You don't look all right. Twilight slowly pushed herself to her hooves. That's the most dark magic I ever channeled in one go. Just promise me you're not going to go all nightmare Twilight on me or something, Starlight said warily. Twilight chuckled weakly. I'm not, don't worry. Starlight looked at the book. I'm sorry, but it didn't work, the pages are still blank. I know, said Twilight as she stepped up to it. I was right, this spell is too powerful to unravel in one go, and it is affecting ponies' minds. But I was able to gain a glimpse at a critical part of the missing information. What did you see? A name, said Twilight. It's not one I recognize, but it's the key to the whole thing. What name is that? Starlight asked. Sunset Shimmer.